Dogs decided to play with today. Excellent. Hello. How you doing? You got her? My dog now has decided to listen to the podcast, and I do her. And then at this time of day, every time I get in here, she goes nuts. So I've got to have the
Mine
kids
does the same thing.
I know. It's like just like I mean, she doesn't pay attention to me all day until I sit like at this particular place and talk to somebody. I guess because I'm maybe not talking to people all day.
Yeah, this is when my dogs always decide to have their battle royale.
Oh yeah,
time
right by my podcast.
Yep, they pick that time.
I know. Anyway, before we get into the show, we've got lots to talk about because we have really good games yesterday and 6 games today, right? 5 games today.
5. Yeah.
5 games today. Before we do that, Russ has something to say.
So quick pre-show. So I want us to all admit, all of us on this panel, that we are part of the evil truth-telling media. And according to Zach Plesac of the Cleveland Indians, that's exactly what we are, because how dare us report on the truth to say what he did to break curfew. So yesterday, on a sprawling, some sort of drive in like a Chevy Suburban, he decided to air his grievances. And he made it worse because he was basically like, yeah, I know. He said, yeah, I know I broke the curfew. So let's start there. He didn't even talk about how that lets your teammates down and could kill the league or anything like that. He glossed over that. Then he's like, listen, I was over a buddy's house and we were opening up baseball cards. And I was like, yeah, next thing I know, he's probably eating apple pie too, right? And then he goes, I asked the head of this league what was the amount of people that we could have in a house, and he didn't know. So then I did some research, and I saw it was 10 people, and we never had more than 8 people. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds very believable, Zach. And then, of course, he never said whether he was wearing a mask or not either. So this is a tale of an entitled baseball player not liking the results of because he wanted to keep his life the same way, because none of us have been able to keep our life the same way. And so he's probably made it worse for himself. But we're all part of the evil media. I just want to
he's made it worse.
Good, Mike.
He's made it worse for himself, but also he's not the only one, because we saw with the Miami Marlins situation, we saw with the St. Louis Cardinals situation, we've seen with a number of situations in Major League Baseball that the system, and it's equal fault between Rob Manfred and the players, it doesn't work. That this traveling but trying to be sequestered is folly. It's a flawed system. And really, I mean, I think that the NBA and the NHL look fantastic when they decided to do what they've done. And Major League Baseball looks like a bunch of petulant children who can't live a disciplined life for 2.5 months. They have to go out and they have to do their things. And I've lost a lot of respect for a lot of baseball players who act just like complete idiots.
So I would say what Plesac did was bad, but I think probably what Mike Clevenger did was worse, right? Because he stood in the dugout that day when Plesac basically got ripped, never said a word, and then the day after it came out that, oh, wait, I did the same thing, and went out and never said a word. So to me, I think that probably earns more distrust from your teammates than even what Plesac did.
I wonder whether or not he was under sort of marching. They knew, and he was under marching orders not to say anything. They wanted to handle each individual.
Maybe.
That may have been the reason why Clevenger didn't talk. Otherwise, although in my mind, he would like take care of the situation at once instead of having 2 separate explosions. Have one.
The part that Plesac didn't explain, and we'll never know, is Plesac said he took a car service back, which was at least the responsible thing to do, and Clevenger took the plane back with the team. And so, why did that happen? Why didn't he take the car service with Plesac? So there's something else there.
As far as evil truth-telling media, I profess to be 2 of those things. I'm not going to say which.
Yeah, I want to know
which they are. Evil
I'm thinking the first 2, but
I'm 2 of those 3 things, but I won't say which they are.
He's evil and media.
Evil, truth-telling, and media. Those are the 3 things. Okay.
Well, given it is a rumors blog, Mike.
It's the rumors blog. Anyway, let's get started. I'm gonna launch into my exciting Blazer story real quickly after we start the show, and then we'll get going. Here we go. Ready?
Yes.
Today is Friday. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, August 14th, 2020.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Anthony Mingioni.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
Nice for keeping it tight. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast coming every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And talking of goings, let's talk about the Blazers, because I've been wearing a different jersey every day for the playoffs. That's my goal. So I usually don't wear hockey jerseys in the show, but for the playoffs, I thought it'd be fun. I'm trying to wear obscure jerseys. I'm running out of some of the more obscure ones, but this one I've always liked. This is a jersey I always wanted. And so the story of the Philadelphia Blazers. Now they're an interesting team. They were part of the WHA, and they were actually, the funny thing is there was a team granted to Miami called the Miami Screaming Eagles. And the Miami Screaming Eagles were going to be a WHA team. They were going to start in 72, 73, but they never got off the ground. There were all kinds of issues with money. And instead, at the last second, they switched the Screaming Eagles to Philadelphia and became the Philadelphia Blazers in 72, 73. But because there was no real run-up and they really weren't prepared, the Blazers were very short-lived in Philadelphia and only played 1 year, one season in Philadelphia. However, they did, during that season, they had some pretty famous players, like Mike was saying before. And that once the basic idea was, okay, we've got Derek Sanderson, but they also had a little guy named Bernie Parent, who was under contract with the team at that point. He was and John McKenzie, who was eventually named the player coach of the team. Here's the great story. When the team's first home game was Friday, October 13th, 1972, which was also a disaster. Even remember, they had come from the Screaming Eagles thing. When the Zamboni drove onto the playing surface after arriving late at the arena, the improperly made ice could not support its weight and cracked, forcing the game to be rescheduled. They lost 16 of their first 20 games before Parent and McKenzie returned. Then Parent, I'm confused about how Parent was on this team at the same time. It feels like 72, 73 he was a flyer. Right?
No. Parent was at that point was a property of the Maple Leafs.
Okay, but he jumped.
He jumped.
The following year would be the most incredible goalie in the world.
He was traded for Doug Favell. He went to the
right. Okay.
Ballard wouldn't pay him, so he went to the WHA. Then the team folded, and he was still Leafs property, and they still wouldn't pay him. So then he was flipped back to the Flyers for the same goal he was traded for originally, which was Doug Favell.
And then he went on to win 2 Stanley Cups and be the most valuable player of that team.
Hey, he was Bruins property first. I mean, to be fair.
After 72, so the one season in Philadelphia, 72, 73, it didn't work out. They moved just a few short miles to Vancouver, where 3,000 miles later, they were the Vancouver Blazers from 1973 to 75. And then for 1 year, they turned into the Calgary Cowboys, which was the other jersey I wore earlier, which was a Calgary Cowboys jersey. So the whole franchise was in existence for 4 years and 4 unbelievably turbulent years. And there were 4 different places: Miami, Philadelphia, Vancouver, and Calgary, all within a 4-year span.
Ironically, Russ, the two, arguably the 2 best goaltenders of the 1970s, Ken Dryden and Bernie Parent, both started as property of the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
And when the Bruins won their 2 cups in 70 and 72, neither one of them were on the team. They won Eddie Johnston and Jerry Cheevers as the goalies. So,
it's interesting. So anyway, I thought that'd be kind of fun. But let's get into the games last night before getting into today, because I thought last night, actually yesterday in general, had some pretty good games. And I want to start with a late game. Because I thought this was the best game, and maybe one of the, besides maybe the Blue Jackets 5 overtime game, this was maybe the best game of the playoffs so far.
Okay.
Do you agree with that one, Mike?
I was awake for it.
I know. I was amazing how late it went. I mean, it was. Did anybody else make it to the end besides me?
I didn't make it to the end.
I did.
I made it through 2.
Kevin, you did.
Yeah.
So I was going to call you, Kevin, after the second overtime, after the second period. I'm like, he can't be still awake. But yeah, you are.
Yeah, no, I fell asleep for part of the first period, and then I woke up, and all I needed was that 26-minute nap, and I was good.
And you're good. There you go. And it's something about the playoffs. It's it's amazing to me, what the playoffs holds, that you just can't you can't stop watching it unless you're literally fall asleep. I refuse to turn a game off if it's still going.
Well,
weird thing about it, I will watch, even and I've been doing this since I was a fan. My mom's the same way. My mom will text me. She texted me last night at 1 a.m. Can you believe this game? I'm like, Mom. She doesn't. She just watch every friggin' hockey game.
Well, it was funny because I was watching this game, and after the second period, I was gonna text in our group text that, boy, does it make a difference for Dallas to have Ben Bishop in goal, because he played pretty well and they were up 4-2. And then there's something weird going on with Dallas because this is a team that only allowed 177 goals against during the regular season. They were one of the best defensive teams. They were porous during the round robin. And in this game, normally a 4-2 lead with that team is golden, and they were playing a great game. They were getting, Heiskanen had a couple goals. Sagan and Ben were playing really well, and then all of a sudden they sort of sat back. They had a Mangiapane goal that was waved off, and if that had counted, Calgary would have won the game because they scored 2 goals to tie it, and then
you don't know, then they would have gone.
Right, but it was a kick. It was definitely a kick. But what I'm saying is the supposed shutdown Dallas Stars defense was anything but shut down. And I don't know what Rick Bowness was smoking in the third period late in the game on a power play when he's got Andres Sekera, who is one of the worst defensive defensemen in the NHL, playing on the penalty kill. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, he's not a defensive guy. I mean,
I think he was looking for speed. Alexiak doesn't have speed, and I guess they felt like they needed it. I don't know. That's
such an important game for Dallas.
It really seemed like they because they had a surprising amount of offense, they had to have a porous defense to go with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So because they shouldn't score goals, and they did, and they shouldn't play bad defense, and they did. Porous was a good word for it, and I thought Bishop really was the difference in that team. They played.
He did have one bad goal, but he was good otherwise.
Yeah, but I think he gave that team, more confidence. And did everybody wake up too when Heiskanen became Heiskanen?
Oh yeah.
What happened there?
That's what all the broadcasters now call him.
They call him Heiskanen?
I don't know if that's proper
It's
pronunciation.
been Heiskanen since the draft, but it was Heiskanen before the draft. And
Tomato, Petrangelo, Peter.
About the
whatever his name is, like he was the catalyst for that victory. That was as good a performance as we've seen.
Yeah, that second goal was a horrible second goal that he scored by Tablet to give up. I mean, didn't protect the short side of the post. I mean, that almost was a killer. I was actually kind of stunned that Calgary was able to rebound because that goal was just a horrific goal from an angle that no way should have made it past them.
But what worked for Calgary in Game 1 didn't work for them in Game 2. They were purposely overly physical in Game 1 with Lucic and Bennett slamming, focusing on Heiskanen and on Klingberg, and that didn't seem to work. They fought through that withering forecheck, and I think obviously with Heiskanen scoring 2 goals, but Klingberg had an assist on one of the goals, and I thought Dallas, in terms of generating offense, that was their best game of the postseason. But again, Kevin's right. It's one of these things where either it's throttle wide open or it's downshifted. Yeah. When it's downshifted, it's a 2-1 game, and when it's throttle wide open, it's 5-4. And I don't get that. Teams that win can play both ends of the ice.
One thing that helped them.
Go ahead, Russ.
I was just gonna say the one thing that helped Dallas was I think they finally realized we need to use our speed. Sagan was using his speed. Gurianov definitely used his speed. Definitely drew at least one penalty. Yeah. I think they realized that, like, hey, we can't let these guys outmuscle us. Now, the play that really shouldn't have happened is Jamie Benn. That was a really dirty play on Tkachuk. And the fact that nothing was called and this guy was hurt for most of the game because of that is egregious. And if he doesn't get fined today, that is going to be an ugly, ugly game next game.
Well, I didn't see the first instance because apparently somebody cup checked Tkachuk, but the play where he left and didn't come back.
Well, that was a stick in the wrong place.
Right. But Alex
right off the face-off, by the way.
Yeah, but Alexiak and Ben sort of sandwiched him around the blue line, and he staggered to the Calgary bench, and he left the ice 3 times in that game. So, I mean, obviously they're focusing on him because I think he's the catalyst for Calgary. But if he's out any long-term situation,
a real hit is fine. Yeah. A stick in the middle of your legs should be automatically called, and the fact that it wasn't was puzzling.
It was bad, but does anyone else think that he's looking? I mean, I love him. One of my favorite players. He's like, but does anyone else think that this is Calgary's putting way too much on him, and he is gonna friggin' be exhausted by Game 4? Like, there's not like what he. I just feel like there is so much on him the way he's playing, and to play physically constantly and be like that, be the only, it just feels like this guy's gonna be shot. He can't. There's no way. No one can keep up this pace. No,
Kevin, I don't think they have any choice because I've been underwhelmed by Gaudreau and Monahan for Calgary, even through the first round. When I thought they took advantage of a injured Winnipeg team. It's all Tkachuk. It's Tkachuk, and like I said, it's Bennett and Lucic, and playing physically. I haven't been impressed with Monahan and with Gaudreau.
Yeah, I mean, I said the other day the only reason I took Dallas, and this had nothing to do with Dallas, it was just my mistrust of the Calgary Flames. They're so up and down, and you even saw that in the game yesterday.
Yeah,
there were 4 or 5 minutes where they looked like the team that played well in the qualification round, and then all of a sudden they'd go back and they were allowing Dallas, a low scoring team, to look like the Tampa Bay Lightning.
And when did Dylan Dubé become Alex Ovechkin?
Now, listen, Dylan Dubé was always stuck in their system. If you look at him in juniors, he had great hands. He was on World Junior teams. He always scored. It's just for whatever reason he was stuck in their system. That's really what it was.
Right. What I'm more disconcerting between Gaudreau and Monahan is that Elias Lindholm hasn't shown up either, right?
Yeah,
so that's the guy to me that I think needs to start producing a heck of a lot more and has been completely invisible, except for one goal, I think, in the first game of the play-in round. That's about it.
I agree with that. Totally. Absolutely. And it is interesting to me, Anthony, that two of the goalies that the Flyers had during one of their darkest goalie periods of all time are still playing, in Mrazek and Cam Talbot. These two guys that they ran through here during a period of time when we couldn't find a goalie in the world to play for them, are still going. But yet Mrazek was out yesterday. And
they went with Reimer. Yeah.
Reimer.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and certainly Michael could certainly speak to this as well, and I know he's ready to.
Yeah, it only took James Reimer 7 years to beat the Bruins.
Oh boy, I knew that was coming.
I mean, minus a 50-goal scorer, that's a pretty big deal.
But I'm not going to lie and say I was any bit. I mean, Talbot has had good pass history. We all know that.
Yeah,
and I thought he had a very good. I thought his qualifying round performance was very good. I thought he had a rough game. It had rough moments certainly yesterday.
He did,
but. I don't see. I think Calgary will still, obviously, at 1-1. They'll still stay with him, I think, for now.
Yeah, they'll stay with him.
Mrazek, on the other hand, was I think they may, if Reimer continues to go. Yeah, I think Reimer will probably stay in that, because I think they played with a level of they played with a good level of confidence, Carolina, in what was a dogfight of a hockey game. I would say Reimer liked his performance a lot.
Well, I'm a little puzzled. Did they go to Reimer because it was back to back?
I think it was back. I think it was more that. But
I think that's what it was.
I think his performance is stands on its own, and I honestly, I trust him a little more than I do.
I would actually go with him the next game. I know we were all talking that we were surprised, but I thought Reimer played a phenomenal game yesterday.
He did. He did.
I thought he was patient. I thought his rebound control was good. I like the fact that he moved the puck to get it out of danger. I mean, to me, look, we joked around when they started him the back-to-back against the Rangers, and Reimer actually outplayed Shesterkin in that game.
Yeah.
And he actually had another strong game. So I'm actually going to him over Mrazek in Game 3 at this point.
Yeah, you've got you've got 2 games here now where he's given an excellent performance. I mean, you've got enough to go with. It's not just, hey, he got lucky in one game performance. He's now put 2 games on, including an important one where Carolina could have been in a major hole. Now they come back with pseudo home ice for Game 3 at 1-1. To me, I would go with Reimer again.
I look at this game, and the reason that I voted for Pasternak for the Hart is exactly for the reason what you saw in that game. Them needing that goal so badly that Pasternak usually gives them that they couldn't get. Now their forecheck was great. Like, they were controlling the puck like crazy. So anybody who's worried about Boston from a perspective of, hey, they look a little sluggish or whatever, no way, man. In that game, there were times when they were just controlling the puck. But they do have trouble scoring, even on the power play sometimes, and that's where they need Pasternak badly.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with Russ before the show. It's like John Shannon showed the replay off of the NBC feed of Pasternak sort of jumping after Bergeron scores the overtime goal, and it looked like he sort of strained like a core muscle or a groin or something like that. But then Russ was saying there was video of him when he was hugging Chara.
Chara hugged him right after that too, and
Chara didn't hug him; he chest bumped him right afterwards.
He chest bumped, and he winced.
Probably didn't help the situation either, given how much pain he was in.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it could very well be an injury that I think. There's a reason he was out for a little bit. He games out in the initial round, so I have to be concerned that it's it may not just be the injury happened there; it may be an aggravation of whatever it is he's already had.
Now, I'm talking about sort of like poetic justice, because Dougie Hamilton essentially was run out of Boston because he wasn't a Bruin type player, and scoring that goal, roofing it past Rask. I mean, he's had a fantastic year, and he's the type of player who, like, I think he has 1 year left in his contract, is going to strike it big in free agency because he can eat minutes and he's an offensive player. And I don't know if the Bruins really miss him because their defense is pretty good with McAvoy and the young guys that they have. But still, I'm sure Dougie Hamilton's saying to himself, "Hey, take that," because
he did. Post game was great. The way he handled himself, he basically said, "I want to say that goal. It was really nice to get, and I'm dedicating it to my grandma. By the way, happy birthday, Grandma." So he says that first.
The guy, he's such a class guy.
And then, because someone asked him what it's like to score against the Bruins, he goes, "Yeah, it's always nice to score a goal and a game-winning goal and in the playoffs against your old team." Absolutely, yeah.
He did not throw away his shot. Let's put it that way.
No, and, look, I've always been a fan of the guy. I felt like just because the guy's an oddball doesn't mean he should not be on teams. And he always produced offensively any team he went to. So I'm glad that it's a bunch of jerks that have basically taken him in because he's a good hockey player.
So without Pasternak, if Pasternak is going for a while here, which we don't know necessarily, but without Pasternak, does it change the series to you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think what happened changed the series because I think there was doubt. The Carolina Hurricanes, I thought, like nobody really wanted to play them in the East. They're hard to play against. They keep coming at you. That's just Rod Brindamore style. And except the Bruins, they had swept them in the last year's conference final. They had beaten them by a shutout in the regular season. So they weren't bothered by the Hurricanes, or so they thought. And I think that changed yesterday. All of a sudden they had trouble with the Hurricanes. And when Pasternak is out, they want to put Krejci up on the top line. And then, of course, that it renders the second line ineffective.
Right.
So I really thought that was an important element. And I agree with Jan about the goaltending. In the regular season, it was a 40-25 split in terms of games for Mrazek. And in the qualification round, Reimer came in surprisingly and played very well in that game. And then they went back to Mrazek. But now all of a sudden you're sitting there. Mrazek has lost to the Bruins in game one, and Reimer is sitting at .959 save percentage with 2 wins. I almost feel like you have to go to him.
You got to give him a shot.
It's similar. It's similar to what's going on with Leonard in Vegas. It's like you have a great option either way, but Leonard is what 7-0 since he's.
You want to get to that? We will talk about that in a second.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying.
But I know it's similar because that's one of my things about Vegas, that Vegas game. So I don't think they should be saying that.
One thing for me on Boston to me is the guy who I need to see a lot more out of, which I've seen one goal so far, is Charlie Coyle. I mean, he to me has been somewhat invisible. I
don't know. I mean, he's gotten pressure on the net. He's just
going to say. I think he's getting pressure, and I think his overall defense. His job is what it is in terms of being a third.
Yeah, but if Pasta's out, he's got to score.
He's going to need to, but he's not one of the first guys you go. I guess you could say he has some of that load, but I don't know if that's a primary thing. You need a little bit more from some of the other players as well. But I think Coyle served a number of different purposes for the Bruins.
I was underwhelmed at what I saw from Kasha and from Richie, and those are 2 guys that they got from Anaheim, expecting them to provide secondary offense and some jam.
Yeah, Kasha would have been one of the ones I would have been looking a lot towards in that circumstance.
And they didn't get either from either of them. So
I mean, Kasha was when they were controlling the puck. Kasha was good. He was behind the net. He was getting the puck to guys. It just wasn't going in. Again, they're just not used to playing without Pasternak. Like it's hard for them, and I think that's the adjustment. But Cassidy said he doesn't expect it to be a long-term issue. So if he misses one more game, that might be all he misses.
Right.
Well, we know that Carolina's done this. I mean, Carolina, the goaltending thing, you all remember when they won the Stanley Cup, the beginning of the playoffs, of those playoffs, they were back and forth. Remember? They were
Gerber and
Ward back and forth. Brindamore is part of that team. So Brindamore doesn't seem to have any fear at all of changing goalies back and forth in the playoffs. I don't think it matters to him at all. I think he thinks of it like both guys. I mean, neither guy is. It's kind of like, when you have two goalies, you don't have any goalies type situation to a degree because neither of them is going to blow you away. But both of them are definitely, moments. And Reimer, Reimer deserves the next game. If he doesn't get the next game, I'm kind of confused. I mean, I think that he deserves it at this point. There's no ways about it. Let's go to then Vegas. We're talking about Vegas and Chicago. And one thing about this game to me is Chicago is for real. I mean, they're really. I think that what we're seeing with Chicago is that they're not just a 12-seeded team. They because they did play better towards the second half of the season, and their young players are coming of age, and their old players are leading with example. They're a team. They took this Vegas team might be the best team playing, and here they are. And
I think everybody's surprised that Chicago got this far, but I mean, you look at Chicago and you look at the depth that they have at forward, and it's more than Kane and Taves. I mean, it's
it's way more than
Rinkat, it's Strome. I mean, they're really, really deep, and other than those two guys and Brandon Saad, they're really young. So
there's two things that stuck out to me. First one was Kane's really feeling the pressure because at one point he didn't score on like this much of an opening, and he was cursing up a storm on the bench because he knows they have to score 4 or 5 goals to win every game. He knows that. The other thing was Taves had a really horrible penalty in that game, and that's not like him. But again, when you're playing these older players for that many minutes, relying on them to cover a better forward group, this is what's going to happen. So they're just hanging with them. I don't think there's any chance they're going to win.
But they're hanging with them. The point is they're hanging with them. To me, that's an enormous story because they're hanging with one of the teams that I think. I mean, we look at Vegas and Colorado in the West, and they are the two teams that really are serious Stanley Cup contenders. And Chicago is playing with them. I mean, they're playing right there with them, and they're not. I mean, they took Edmonton out. Granted, and what we're seeing from Crawford too is incredible. I mean, what Crawford is giving them
dropped off a bit now, though.
Right, but still, he still made some saves yesterday that were pretty.
He was brilliant yesterday. What I thought interesting was, well, first of all, that horrible line change on the game-winning goal, and you talk about Taves' penalty. To me, more egregious was his failure to cover Smith in the slot. He just completely left him alone. Part of that was probably the line change resulted in that. Chicago's defense just can't keep up with Vegas. I mean,
Riley Smith is like a lightning bolt out there.
Yeah,
he reminds me a lot of
Florida. Good trade by Florida.
He reminds me in many ways, especially when you get into low air, into offensive zone, in between the circles, with that short area burst. He reminds me of Jake Gensel sometimes with the way he can burst in. Yeah. Not quite the same, but it's that same sort of threat that you better be aware of him.
Agreed.
Or you're really going to be in trouble.
Leonard got hit the funny bone on a shot yesterday.
Go ahead, you finish. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, Dan. I was talking over you. I wanted to get Kevin's opinion on the goaltending in this one too, because I thought, I know they're going to stay with Leonard, and is Fleury hurt? Do we not know anything, or what is going on? Is there something else you think, Kevin, that's going on there besides this, or are they going to go? I mean, I think I think Fleury's earned his shot with this team. What are your thoughts, Kevin, on the Fleury situation? Fleury or Leonard?
I think he's frozen. One thing I want to mention, again, we talk about, why is Florida never getting better? Why are they having trouble? They're the ones who left Riley Smith exposed for the expansion draft.
No, I know. That's true.
And Riley Smith's been one of their best players.
And gave him March or so to take Riley Smith.
Right, that's right.
Yep. That was more egregious.
Yeah. So, I mean, true. This is why Florida's in the boat they're in.
But this is where it bodes well for Chicago because Stan Bowman has been able, like Kubalik, who he gets off the scrap heap from LA for a 5th-round pick. If he can get himself 2 defensemen and he re-signs the right goalie, they're in the playoffs next year. Obviously the whole
that depends, Mike, on Seabrook going, let's say, on long-term IR, freeing up salary, right? If they do that, then they have money to play with,
right?
Which helps them a lot. I mean, I thought Crawford was great. I thought Chicago. I mean, look, you mentioned their offense and their defense. I didn't think Leonard played badly, but like I was saying, it looked like Leonard got hit in the funny bone on a shot. You saw him like kind of wincing and moving his arm. I thought if that didn't free up quickly, you might have seen Fleury end up having to go between the pipes at some point yesterday.
But that goal,
he didn't do a Robbie Dangerfield where he did that, and
but you saw him like shaking his arm and moving trying to get the feeling back in his arm. I'm thinking, thank God he didn't have to block anything with his glove hand, or else they would have scored there.
That could be a fractured ulna. You forfeit.
I mean, I don't know. To me, the goal he gave at the end of that period to the Blackhawks was such a lazy goal. The end of the second period, it was like he just didn't. I mean, Kane made a hell of a pass on it. It was a great play, but at the same time, he didn't even try for it.
You are not a Robin Leonard fan.
You know what it is, too?
Just get it out there. Just get it out there.
Get it out there.
Get it out of your system.
Robin Leonard is
not my favorite.
The first way to come around is admitting you have one.
I wasn't a huge fan of him back when he was on the Islanders, but I've come around on him. I really have. I mean, he's a hell of a goalie.
He really hasn't changed much other than he has no issues that he used to have. His dad's still the same goalie coach. And he still plays the same way. It's just now
you get him going side to side and you can beat him. And
that doesn't have that other issue that used to derail him.
I know, but the side to side aspect of his game to me is where I have problems with. Like and Chicago, he's starting to figure this out. They're moving him side to side a lot, and that goal is a perfect example.
By the time Chicago figures it out, they'll be golfing.
But if it's not Chicago, Colorado will destroy him. Like, to me, if you're going to win the Stanley Cup, it's not going to be with Robert Leonard.
Well, I mean, we'll see. Maybe they'll have to change it at that point. But the other thing, Mike, you're right about Bowman being able to do some things. But the problem is, the more he adds the youth, the age part still bodes big for all of those other players like Keith and Taves and Kane, especially Keith. And so eventually they're still going to slide down. They're never going to be able to even hold this for more than 2 more years.
Well, I mean, he's got to clear some. It's there's going to be a lot of work there, but I mean, I think the Connor Murphy contract is abysmal.
It's an albatross.
He's played better in the playoffs, but they've got Saad at 1 year left at $6 million, and Zach Smith, who they took as a salary dump from Ottawa. That's $9.25 million in salary right there. Whew. They could buy outside, maybe buy out Smith and clear cap space. And I think they're going to have to do that to address their defense. I mean,
this is a balancing act, So again, did they do themselves any favors if they get swept by Vegas here?
Yeah.
By not getting a higher draft pick? I don't know. I don't think they did.
They did. No, I mean I'm talking to I can't speak. The team building of this tournament is just.
Oh my God! There's only so much team.
No, it's
building.
not. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's
one thing.
I would rather have a top 10 pick than all the team building.
No, that's where you're absolutely ridiculous.
This team magically made the playoffs. They were not going to make the playoffs. They would have been out of the playoffs.
What they are getting right now, seeing with these young players, Dylan Strom's like the perfect example of this. Okay, because Strome. He has needed confidence more than anything else. Like, he's a great confident. When he was in juniors, he was a great confident guy. He would just own the ice. You saw him out there.
He didn't need
the confidence he's getting is better than your first round. The confidence all these guys are getting is better. He
didn't need confidence, Zach. He needed to play with the right players. In Arizona, they were asking him to be the number 1 center because he was the 3rd overall pick, and here he's playing with the guy he played with in junior, who just happens to be one of the best young forwards in the NHL.
Like his brother.
All true. No, it's all true. I mean, all you're saying, Mike, is 100% true. But
I'm just saying. High draft picks. Both of them didn't pan out with their original team. Arizona likely gave him up too soon. Edmonton didn't play with the right guys even at talent. Now, granted, he's helped by Panarin, Ryan, but clearly same type of situation where the players he's now playing with helps him elevate his game to the point of he may start to meet where he was drafted.
Well, we sort of went by the Bruins Carolina series a little quickly, and I wanted to touch on this because it sort of feeds into your narrative of team building and the what's going on with the.
And Kevin already helped me with that because you were gone, Kevin, while they just.
Let me make my point.
Go ahead.
Tuukka Rask's comments after the game talking about, well, this really isn't a playoff situation, or
yeah, I'm not saying this.
But he's a weirdo.
He's a weirdo.
Crazy about this.
Everybody else is treating this like it's a Stanley Cup playoff. You're gonna use Tuukka Rask as the determining factor of what's going on in August.
There's a human nature element to this that you're ignoring.
He gave up 3 goals. Did he really suck? Come on.
The human nature element to this is that you're ignoring is that yes, everyone is playing hard, and yes, they're playing hard because they want to win a freaking Stanley Cup, which is everybody's dream. But if you've won a Stanley Cup recently and you've already done that,
he won it in 2011 as a backup.
It doesn't matter. He's won it.
Well,
the fact of the matter is, if you've until you win a Stanley Cup, you haven't won a Stanley Cup, right? I mean
that's obvious.
Thank you. Everybody agrees with me finally.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stanley Cup. So I'm seeing it. You saw it with Pittsburgh. You saw it with, the reason you're seeing Vegas kicking butt, and they're hungry to win a freaking Stanley Cup.
Kevin, do you think that the comments of Tuukka Rask, where you're sort of blasé about the Stanley Cup tournament, is reflective of the majority of some of these players playing in the bubbles in Edmonton and Toronto? Because I don't think that's the case.
No, I don't either. In fact, many of them have kind of said that. If you listen to the quotes, how it's unique and it's different, but once they hit the ice, they don't even notice. I've heard several players say, I don't even pay any attention that there's no fans because I'm busy trying to make a play. Because I don't know if you've heard. I can't remember who it was. I don't know if you've heard, but we don't have any time to make a play in the NHL. Let alone worry about.
Right. And I'm with all of that, and I think they're going to say it, and I think they relieve it too. But I think there's a human nature to the desperation of playoff hockey.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm sure maybe it affects some people, and clearly, Tuukka Rask. Like if I'm the Boston Bruins, I'm concerned about his comment because he really sounded like he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Given how the Bruins played, and like he's 1-3, and he's got an 8.97. Like he hasn't looked horrible, but he's got a 929 career playoff save percentage, and he's 8.97 thus far against the Carolina Hurricanes. And he doesn't, and he's lost 3 or 4 games, and he looks uninspired. He looks like he's not engaged. So I would be concerned about. But I believe the players when they say once they hit the ice, they're not. It's just the same to them.
I'm not saying I don't believe them, and I'm not saying that they don't feel that way. I'm just saying that the difference between winning and losing, like why we see teams that are on the verge of elimination in the playoffs usually work their tails off a little, because that desperation, that little bit of extra effort that is like, man, I am down and out. I don't want to face the fans. They're going to boo at me in the media tomorrow, or I get to go home and leave the bubble tomorrow. That little thing, which is so subliminal down at the bottom of I just cannot imagine it's not playing into this on teams that have already won it sometimes. I just feel like that it's there. And when you saw all those teams, all those series end in 4 games on that big day that we had, like except for the one game with Toronto, which practically ended in 4. I felt like that with all those teams, they did not look like they were playing elimination games to me. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a reason for all of it. Like I think you could make a case that on every team there's 1 or 2 players who are worried about what's going on at home or who have all that kind of stuff. So could it have an impact? Well, sure it could. But like the Pittsburgh Penguins. My observation about the Penguins was not that they didn't have a zeal to win again. Is that the lineup is stale.
Yeah,
like they didn't. It's the same guys, and they're pushing, and they don't have that extra gear, and they need some guys to add a layer of urgency to it. And the same is true as Nashville. Like Nashville is a stale lineup.
And the comments that came out in the last couple of days from David Poyle and Jim Rutherford are reflective of that, because they're basically coming out openly and saying there are going to be big changes, and they don't mean firing assistant coaches. They mean with the roster. I heard Elliot Friedman talking on his podcast yesterday, talking about the Predators buying out Kyle Turris with 4 years left on his contract because he's been a zero the last 2 years. That would be unheard of.
It's fun. What's funny about that is he actually played better under John Hines than he did. Like I mean, I would have bought him out a year ago.
But I think
by the way,
sorry.
That's the difference between a 70-year-old general manager who's been around forever and can go up to ownership and say, I really need to buy this guy out, even though it's going to cost a lot of money.
By somebody
you're right.
In the same post game, everybody jumped on Rask for this statement, but he also said, after 4 months off, I'm not in prime shape and I'm just trying to have fun out there. Nobody used that quote. Nobody.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
They all like to feed the narrative that let's blame Tuukka Rask.
I've been in this business 35 years and I wouldn't have used that quote. Like, come on, what does that mean?
But it's just because in Boston, they have been jumping on Rask for a couple of years, and this year he was spectacular. But then all of a sudden there's a 4-month break. Like, that's not his fault.
Even Ty Anderson wouldn't be able to defend Rask after that comment.
Well, no, I mean, I think it was a little bit of jumping. It was a little bit piling on. And I'm not using him as an example for my point, but my point.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying it.
I'm just saying that I still want to see what the Blues. I still need to see more out of the Blues. Another team that won the Cup recently.
But
I need to see more.
But you got to agree that it's being a professional athlete 101 to show apathy, which is what he did. For whatever pursuit your team is involved in.
Right.
Because that's essentially what he said is it feels like exhibition.
Yeah.
And you can put up with anything, but not apathy.
You're right. 100% right.
Especially not in Boston.
I think he might have gotten away with that kind of a comment, I think, in the round robin. But when there's actually your season is on the line now, the timing is terrible. That's the big thing. Yeah. It's all about timing and the context of when it's said. We're talking about a game where you know he's not going to lose, then that's a different story. But now it's 1-1. It's and the series could very well be in the balance very soon.
I think comments that Russ, you brought up the other comment too, which is like I'm trying to have fun and all that stuff. But I do think that it does tie. They are tied together because to me that sounds like because Rask is a pretty happy-go-lucky character.
Yeah,
like you can all agree that I've talked to him before. It's like he's like
he's a good guy.
He's a good guy. He dresses well. He's up with life. He's loving life. He's not like a dismal goalie. He's like
no. But I think he's being honest where he's saying.
I think that's what he's saying in both those statements. I think he's saying like he's very frustrated with the way the team's playing. He's frustrated by the fact that they're not playing well, and he also is like, I should be having more fun because I'm a guy who usually loves playing hockey, and why don't I love playing hockey? And I don't think it has anything to do with the bubble necessarily. That whole statement. I think it just has to do with the fact that his team's not playing well right now, and they, and that was fine. And I just really think that the way they treated those 4 games, the 3 games before this whole thing started was just the wrong idea. I think that was the wrong way to go about it.
Well,
to play that down and think they could shift in the next gear. I mean, they got lucky to win the first game against Carolina. They lost.
That's not what he's doing. He's telling you he is trying to get and find that same shape he was in during the season, and he hasn't found it yet. Doesn't mean he won't find it next game.
Right.
The question is, does he really mean being in shape, or he means finding that edge that he needs, or that focus within the net, or his ability? Right. So we rip players when they're not honest and they give perfunctory answers. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, he's actually being brutally honest, saying, "Look, he's struggling and he's working to get his game back." Yeah. I don't think you can take him to task because at least he's admitting, saying, "Hey, you know what? I am not at the point where I need to be, but I'm working to try to get there."
No,
you know what? That's a great point because that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And there is a double standard, and I've always been bothered by it. On the other hand, who does he owe allegiance to? Does he owe his allegiance to his team or to, do the right thing for the media? And I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And so I would argue that even if he felt that way as a teammate, if I was a Boston Bruin, I would say you keep your mouth shut.
Right.
Even if you felt that way. Now, you're absolutely right, by the way, because I note that all the time. We say all the time, be honest, and then someone comes up and says something politically incorrect, and we crucify them upside down on the cross. To me, that does seem unfair.
And what he admitted to may be what his teammates are thinking also. They may recognize that he's not at the level where he needs to be. But the fact that he's going, say, look, I'm trying to get back to level. I'm working there. Probably admits that, you know what, I have an issue that I got to get myself through, and I know I have to be at that level for us to have a chance to win. So,
and in the end, we're also dealing with a decade-long shadow. at the same time. For Boston, you know, he's perpetually been in the shadow of Tim Thomas winning a Stanley Cup in 2011. And it seems like it's a long time, but it may for the players, but I certainly think from a Boston perspective or a Bruins fan perspective, he's always in that prism. And until he's able to win a cup, you know, that's going to be something that's always going to be hovering over him, despite his excellent performance.
But that should be over with after the way he performed last year, because he was one of the main reasons why they got to game.
Agreed. But it's there's a percentage of people who don't feel that way.
Go ahead.
Let's also not forget that at the end of the regular season, there was talk about that that maybe he was done with the game. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of talk about that.
There was.
Now let's touch on the game that was the first game.
Can I have one thought before we move that, Mike? Sorry. I do want to get Kevin's opinion on the Leonard versus Fleury thing, because I think that this is something that, like, I feel like Robin Leonard's. I think you guys are all ripping me that where you're going. I hate Robin Leonard. I don't hate Robin Leonard. But I do think that if you're going to win a Stanley Cup, you're going to win it with Marc-Andre Fleury and not Robin Leonard.
This is what I think. I think the Vegas Golden Knights weren't just buying insurance when they got Leonard. I think they saw this coming. I think they love Marc-Andre Fleury. I think they see him as the incredible teammate and as a wonderful spokesman for the deal, and they still think he's a pretty good goalie. But anybody who watched the Golden Knights could tell you that he wasn't quite as good as he was the previous season. And I think they watched all that and were concerned, because I think, and we've heard 2 or 3 guys now say the same thing. You know, this is the best of the teams we've had, and I think they felt they could win it. And Leonard was playing very well in Chicago. They sent a lot of guys to look at him, and I think they thought, let's get Leonard, because if we don't like how Fleury's playing, or if he still isn't, we're going to ride this horse, because this horse looks pretty good. Yeah. So I don't know. I think they can win with Leonard. I think he's playing well. I think it's a difficult situation to be in because of how much they respect Marc-Andre Fleury, although I would argue that he is the consummate pro, and he won't like it, but he'll put up with it because that's his.
Can we wait for Leonard to lose a game first?
Yeah.
I mean, he posted a 224 goals against average and a 927 save percentage his first year. Went to 251 and 913, and then up to 277 and 905. As Kevin said, he's clearly not trending in the right direction right now.
You're showing less patience with Robin Leonard than Mikko Koskinen.
At least Leonard's undefeated. Koskinen was always defeated.
Yes. Now, okay, we have to touch on the game from yesterday, the first game, because I think, subconsciously we all were sort of like saying rest in peace to the Jackets, because they lose 5 overtimes and in a sort of heartbreaking fashion, and 10 shots in the first 12 minutes. They for Tampa Bay, they get a 1-0 lead and they kill a penalty. They get the tying goal. They get Bjorkstrand's goal, and then they shut Tampa down like they shut them down for most of game 1. I'm not calling into question Tampa's abilities, because I think they're a great team, Kev, but with a reduced Hedman and with no Stamkos, Columbus could beat them again.
Yeah, and even if those guys were there, I think Columbus can beat them. I mean, I thought they would come out and they would certainly be lifted by their performance in winning game 1, and they did for a short period of time. Yeah. They looked like they were going to take charge, and Columbus couldn't get any shots, and then all of a sudden, when they couldn't cash in and all that, Columbus said, "Hey, we just survived. Let's roll," and they did. And as always the case, we tend not to give the underdog enough credit for playing well. And Columbus, man, like every time I feel like I love every guy on that team.
Yeah,
like all of them just seem to step up and make a big play, and we're really seeing. I thought it was interesting discussion on NBC between periods about redrafting in Laine's year when Laine goes 2, and Dubois goes 3. And, hindsight, of course, is perfect, but who would you rather have right now? And I think I'll know the answer to that.
And how much did we hear? How much did we hear that year in that draft? Or how much criticism did Columbus take for taking him 3rd?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because John Davidson's been on a lot talking about obviously the Bruins getting number 1, and actually that came up on the 2 minute man podcast with Scott Bernstein. He said, look, he talked about how much criticism they took.
Yeah.
Yeah, they took Dubois, but he basically brought into staying the course, right? The need to stay the course, the need to let guys mature, and the need to let guys develop. And they said, look, they're reaping the benefits now. And to me, yesterday's game is prime example why John Tortorella is a Jack Adams candidate. He basically had the team flush that first game out of their system and be able to come back yesterday with a clear mind and play that way. They basically didn't look like the team that was bent or disappointed out of losing game 1. They, as you said, they dominated after that first part of the game.
It was one game. They looked at like one game. The guy that I'm really just super impressed with that is not Foodie. I've said that before, and I really think Foodie's amazing. But I mean, what Alexander Texier does for them is just
he's lightning fast.
It's amazing. Just where he plays power play, he plays penalty killing.
Remember, he played in France. Like, this is a hell of a scout.
It does have a little bit of Belmar in him too, which is pretty funny. Like, there's a little bit of Belmar that another French player I think of. Like,
but he's such a high
style. There's a little bit of different style.
Yeah, I mean, Texier is just smoother. And
I like Belmar. Don't get me wrong.
Can I have the scouting?
Really solid two-way players, but the idea that I with Texier, I'm just like,
can I have the scouting? Can I have the scouting job in France? I'd like to stay in Paris.
Yeah, listen, a couple of years. I wrote about him a couple of years, and he's in the league. But the one thing that nobody's still talking about with Columbus, and another company clued me into this, and the article is on my website, is they may be the best. They have the best fitness level of any team in the league. That's what's showing here. And nobody really talks about it. We said, Seth Jones looks great and he went 63 minutes, but the whole team, their whole fitness level, they do some things that other teams don't. And I did get into it in this article. I'm not going to get into it now, but I'm just saying that is a part of some of their success.
Seth Jones obviously also he reiterated that after the game, that they after the 5 overtime affair, that he said it didn't look like it was a case where it was for bravado.
No, it's not.
I mean, it was pretty amazing to see.
And the thing that's the most impressive is they did that without Cam Atkinson, who was their best scorer last 2 seasons ago, and he had no shots on goal in the 5 overtime game, so he's got to be playing hurt, and they scratched him for game 2. So I don't know. It's a situation like Pasternak. I don't think they can win the series without Atkinson coming back and at least contributing, but. I mean, the way they play, they're just energy and tough and defensively sound, and they back Korpisalo, and that is incredibly frustrating to a team like Tampa, who just Tampa can play both ways, but they want a freewheel, and they got so much offensive talent, and Columbus just does not allow them to do it.
Yeah, we have Alexander Wenberg making a move like he did yesterday, and we're all going, where the heck has that been?
John Tortorella was asking that question, especially after
I don't know. I mean, that move was there when they drafted him, right? But then they rushed him, and then they rushed him into a top-line center position, and I think it did stun him a little. I think now that the pressure is off of him and he doesn't have to play top-line center, I think you might see more of that. The funny thing about Texier is, because I wanted to double-check it, he's another guy. He's 20 years old. He never played in junior hockey.
Right? Yeah. No, he's at the 20-year-old. The maturity level for him is unbelievable as a 20-year-old. Like, he's
what's interesting about what we're seeing with teams like Vancouver and Columbus and Carolina to a certain extent as well is I wonder if we're seeing sort of a changing in the how playoff hockey, how to prepare for it. Like in the past, it was always about experience. You had to lose in the playoffs before you know how to win and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But we're now seeing, like, the Vancouver Canucks are a better example than Columbus, because Columbus has, some players who have been in the playoffs and lost. But, if you've got energy, it's almost better than experience now. If you're relentless, if you keep coming, like that Vancouver team is so impressive. They're so young; they have no idea what they don't know about winning the playoffs, but they just keep coming. And I would rather, in the way the game's played now, I almost feel like I'd rather have a team that plays nonstop, relentless hockey as opposed to a team like, that has been there before and kind of understands it, because, St. Louis should dominate, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a young Vancouver team. They just won the cup. St. Louis knows the path up Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And Vancouver has no idea. They don't even know where to start. But they don't look out of place.
It's ironic you said that, because Tortorella in one of his post games was asked about the experience of the team, and because he's got a young team, and he says it's great to have experience, but sometimes it's great just to have young players who are ignorant of what the pressure is and just go out there and do what they're told, and if they do that, then you can win, and he's right, because some of his key players are guys who have no experience. Like Foodie is 20 years old, and he's just doing what his coach wants him to do. And
John likes when you do what he's told.
Right? Oh yeah, sure.
Right. I remember these young players have played a lot of games in situations sort of like this, where you have like the World Juniors and stuff like that, where you're playing these games and you're not playing in front.
This is like World Junior atmosphere, because sometimes there is no crowd.
They really don't know like what an NHL playoff crowd is like. They've never been through that before, which is like, it's just kind of interesting. Like
Memorial Cup is like
it
that.
is, but Carter Hart's never. I mean, if if Carter Hart in that in the Wells Fargo Center during the playoffs was the whole day, he doesn't have any idea what that's like. Like that kind of thing. There's I don't think anything in when you have
a crowd is a crowd. At the same time, I would say if the World Junior Championship, I think for Hart, is an extremely valuable mental
for sure
resource to draw from.
It's got a lot of pressure like this has, where people are watching back.
Well, he did play it. He played it at the Bell Center, where he didn't play his best, and then he won it in Buffalo. But both times, it was a great crowd when he won. Like I was at both those. Yeah, it's a great crowd.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that a lot of these players, I also think, Kevin, that it's a little hard to tell if we're making that shift yet. I've been wanting to see that shift come for a couple of years now, because I think that when you look at how kids train now, how they learn to eat now, like how they do all these things, they're so different than even 10 years ago, right? So, but I also think it's so hard to tell, having the big break. Like, did some of the younger players just stay in shape better because they're more used to just not eating crap and stuff like that? And they're just, the big break is so hard to make everything determine whether we're there yet or not.
Right.
But I think the break makes it feel like if you took the break away, you would be like, it's about like speed and energy, but and youth and.
It's a good point that you made, because a lot of this is, how prepared players are when they arrive now in terms of nutrition. My favorite quote of the last 5 or 6 or 7 years is when a player who wanted to be anonymous said, if you want to eat a hamburger now in this thing, you got to do it alone in your room.
I remember we talked about that. It was the story was like something like,
if you go to a restaurant with teammates, you go to a restaurant with teammates and order a hamburger and fries, they're going to be all over you.
They're going to yell at you.
And that's the difference. And they all have skating coaches, and they got, moves coaches, they've got defensive coaches. They're just much better prepared. So when they come in the league, maybe they haven't played games, but
I'll use the example. Remember in the 80s, when McDonald's did sponsor like the Olympic team did eat McDonald's at times.
I know.
Not short after that.
It's incredible. But going down to like the youth hockey level and youth soccer like that, they're just the pre-meals, the nutritionists, all this stuff, like just nowhere near, like none of that existed 10 years ago, and definitely not 20 years ago.
I definitely need an eating coach.
For sure.
We should talk.
Wait, so you think you could be a better eater, Mike? Is that what you're getting at?
No, just somebody who would shock me a shot.
To the NHL? You still trying to get to the NHL? Is that the issue?
Otherwise known as a nutritionist, Mike.
All right, so today we need to get into today.
I'm as close as I'm ever going to get.
Briefly today, let's do 5 minutes, wraps up in 5 minutes here. So briefly today, we've got 5 games, and I think that we should all think about what the most important games are today to teams. And you brought up one, I think, which is really crucial, Kevin, which is St. Louis has to get their act together, right?
Yes.
That's one that they have.
I don't see it happening against this Vancouver team. I am so bullish on the Canucks right now that I just love that team, and you know, the more I get to watch it, you know, like they have all the elements, and I thought, well, they're a team for 2021. I'm not so sure they're not a team for 1920. Like, Quinn Hughes isn't just good for a young defenseman. He's
a top defenseman in the league.
Yeah, best
the American young defenseman that the Americans have is just amazing. I think about it.
Well, Bo Horvat has really become, a real leader, and I just love everything about that team.
My candidate for I think the most important performance today is the Washington Capitals showing up, because if you don't, they could be going down pretty quickly in this series.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it won't be. I think his team. I think their team showed up early. I think they had too much emotion.
Right.
And then I also think Holtby not looking great helped in that demise of that game. I think Holtby has to look sharp for at least 2 periods.
I mean, with Backstrom out probably a week because he's in concussion protocol, and Carlson probably not at 100%. I mean, you're going to need Ovechkin and Oshie and Wilson.
And you watch, Wilson's going to go after someone like Bavolier or something with the same kind of hit because since nothing happened to Lee, which I don't think it should have, but because of that, Wilson's going to be headhunting today, I'm sure.
He'll go after Barzal. I'll bet you anything.
I don't know if he'll be Barzal. I don't know.
The other thing, too, is, and they would deny it if you ask anybody, but it sure feels like Trotz is in the Capitals' heads.
Yes.
You know, they know he knows everything about them. And they know what he can do in terms of encouraging a strong defensive play. So
I mean, Kev, I think him and Reardon need to get in the boxing ring and settle it. It just seems like they don't like
really pissed. I think Ovechkin looks really angrier than I've ever seen him look.
He does look angry.
Really and I think that's because he thinks Trotz is. I think Trotz has gotten in Ovechkin's head pretty big time.
I think Trotz pushed the right buttons yesterday, like inserting Komarov in the lineup, playing that muscle line of Martin, Cizikas, and Clutterbuck. I mean, Komarov is a pain in the ass to play against. He's sort of a one-dimensional player, and he played with Ovechkin in the KHL. I wouldn't doubt he's talking trash to him every single game.
I think the biggest story today is Kirk Muller, though, because taking over for Julian. We don't know if this will galvanize the Canadiens somehow, or if Muller will mess around with the lineup a little, like I think Julian should have. But if he somehow comes out with a win today and just evens up that series, he's going to be a hero. If they come out losing 2-0 and they're down 2-0 in the series, it's not going to look great either way.
I think there's a bunch of stuff.
Guys, I got to run. We'll see everybody later.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. I agree with that. I think Montreal's going to have. I actually do think Montreal's going to win today, just because of the emotion of everything that's going on.
Because of the emotion, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, it's like typical. I mean, I did talk to somebody yesterday, players in the bubble, who said to me, "Don't expect a lot of long." So he was reading our predictions and watched the show actually, and said, "Don't expect a lot of long series," because he said flat out, the reality is. It's very different now to come from behind. Like if you're back 2-0 or 3-1 in a series like this, you don't have that ability to get on a plane, go to a new place, go to a new rink, skate around a different way. You're just doing the same thing. And he said that is a major thing. And he said,
"This is tournament play. They've all played tournament play."
It is, but tournaments generally aren't best of sevens.
No, but
it's usually best of 3 maybe or whatever in the final with single eliminations before that. That's how tournaments work. When it best of 7, to come from behind, if you fall down 3-1, realizing that you're just going to the same rink again to play the same team again, the same place again.
Well,
that gets into the whole self-motivations part you keep bringing up. Right?
Yeah.
If you're self-motivated, it depends if you really want to go home or not, right? So, for example, Arizona falls behind 2-0. I don't think they're coming back against Colorado just because I don't think they're coming back against Colorado.
No, I agree with that.
I think it's a talent thing, right? Same thing today. Calgary, no Kachuk, is going to have a major uphill battle against Dallas today. It's huge. Right. I mean, that's why them somehow winning this game, especially if Kachuk's going to miss another game, is huge, because if you lose today and now you're losing without him again, there's a good probability you're going down 3-1 to Dallas in that series.
Right.
Yeah. No, I do agree. I mean, I'm not saying this is like a common thing, but there is something to the psychological aspect of,
But most teams evened it up, Beck. The only team that right now hasn't evened it up are your Chicago Blackhawks.
No, you've evened it up. You're right. No, most teams have evened it up. I agree. But I'm just saying.
The Blackhawks who are facing Robin Leonard, those Blackhawks, Russ?
Yeah. And barring Darcy Kemper emulating Terry Sawchuk, Arizona's in deep trouble.
Yeah.
They'll need a Herculean performance from Kemper.
But look, Tuukka will have those guys fired up,
Sure.
and I'm sure we'll see a good effort.
I mean, there's not many teams that can play with Colorado.
No.
Arizona can't for sure. I mean, that's the biggest mismatch by far.
Do you want to touch on the couple things in your blog today before we end the show?
Yeah, I'll just real fast. I mean, because I've run rumor charts updates and stuff like that. So the Alex Pietrangelo stuff, you had mentioned yesterday, Mike, that you really think he's done for sure, that this is it. And I did some calls yesterday to try to find out if that was the case, because it does feel like that. I mean, I agree with you, like from a perspective. I wanted to talk to them, and I really got a little bit of a different impression from people within St. Louis saying that there were some talks happening, that there were some thoughts here that they were trying to figure out a way. They definitely don't want to lose him. He does not want to go. He could take less money to stay there. How much money is, of course, the big issue, at some point, and they said, and the one thing that came up while we were talking about that, because we all know Buffalo's going to, someone just said this flat out, but we all know Buffalo's going to throw a crap load of money at him. And that's what it was just, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What do you mean? Yeah, that's what everybody's saying. Buffalo's going to back up the truck for Peter Rand.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay. On him staying in St. Louis, if they buy out Alex Steen, or Alex Steen retires, or if they trade Tyler Bozak, they can create the cap space. It's the term. It's a question of 8 years, 7 years for a defenseman who's 30 years old. Maybe it happens, but they prepped themselves with the acquisitions of Scandella and Falk and Perunovic coming in next year, that if they lose them, they're okay. They're prepared.
Yeah.
But I seriously doubt that Buffalo, they would have to offer him more than Eichel to come to Buffalo, because Buffalo is such a train wreck.
They don't have a ton of cap space either.
No, they have a ton of cap space this year. They do.
Oh, this year, yes.
But the thing is that you're talking about, you're going to have to sign Dahlin in the next year. They can extend him this after the season. They can, but the question is, will they? And if they do that, it's probably going to end up being a contract similar to Shabbat in Ottawa.
Well, and Montour is an RFA.
This is an interesting thing, and we have to talk about this going forward, because Elliot Friedman referred to Montour and to one other, Athanasiou in Edmonton. Apparently, the new rules for arbitration is a player, if you go to arbitration and one team offers one amount, the other team, the player offers the other amount, and the arbitrator rules for the lower amount, or they back out, the player can accept the lower amount. They can stay with the team. It's not like the situation.
They can't walk away.
They can't walk away. Now the thing is that
the player wants to walk away.
Right. What Friedman is saying is this may prevent teams like Edmonton from even qualifying a player,
right?
Like Montour in Buffalo, who probably on a qualifying offer would get around $4 million, right. And CU, who was making, I think, 3 something. If they didn't like the way he played there, they don't want to be stuck with the qualifying offer.
But I got to tell you, if you don't qualify Montour, there's going to be 12 teams to 15 teams looking at him.
Oh, yeah, but maybe they don't want to pay him the money, Russ. That's the thing.
That's a risky business with a player like that. I could see it. I could see if it's Curtis Lazar. Look, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
But Montour, that could kill you.
But that's going to be an interesting situation when the season is over with these players in terms of arbitration situations, whether teams don't even qualify them, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of free agents out there with no cap space, and a lot of players taking $700,000 just to stay in the league.
What's the lowest amount that we think Nolan Patrick is going to take from the Flyers?
$1 million.
$1 million?
I'm gonna say it's $2 million actually.
Don't they have to offer him just 10% above what his current salary is in order to be able to offer him ARB? So
$1.1 million.
I think it's $2 million, and I think it's over. I think it's like $2 million 2-year deal. That's what I would see them doing.
That's $1 million a year.
$1 million a year.
I don't know if Patrick would take that. I don't know if Patrick would take that. That's the thing.
I mean, he might not take that, but I think that's where it would end up. I think the most likely scenario would be like 3 years, 2.5 per, that kind of thing, just something like that.
And the other thing here on the Nylander note here with the Flyers, I I don't know who we're talking about. You're not.
Yeah, no, not Nylander. The other thing I put out there was that the Flyers. I heard the Flyers name mentioned with Nylander, of course. Right now, usually I don't write rumors when teams are still playing and all that stuff, but I have to this year because we have no choice. So
you don't have a choice right now.
There's no time in between here. But the Flyers are definitely, when you look, and I thought it was Chris Johnson. I saw talking the other day about he was trying to play out the Nylander thing, and he was trying to see what teams could actually take him and what teams couldn't take him, and.
Well, what teams would be interested in, not take them? It's like they're dumping them. They're not dumping.
What team has the assets and the space and the desire for this kind of player? And really, when I was talking to people about this more and more, I talked about the Flyers name kept coming up. The Flyers had, and that Nylander, and I mentioned this before, that when Nylander was signing his deal with Toronto, at the last minute, I was one of my really good sources in Minnesota said that they were working on a deal with the Wild too. That could have been like if he doesn't sign that deal and becomes a free agent, the Wild were jumping in and making a deal. And that at that point, the GM of the Wild was Fletcher. Okay, so that knowing that Fletcher and I heard that Fletcher was the guy in that organization, pushing for Nylander, that he really likes Nylander. So the question is, the Flyers have a lot of access, a lot of defense. They don't have a lot of cap space, of course.
So they're going to have to trade Gostisbehere if they're going to make this happen, and it's up to the Leafs if they want Gostisbehere or not.
And I would, if I had to guess, I would say they don't, because Gostisbehere is another Tyson Barrie type of offensive puck-carrying defenseman, and he's a left shot, and they're loaded on the left side with Riley, Muzzin, Sandin, and Dermott. So, I would think
they could trade him Robert Hagg if the Leafs could, work it out salary-wise.
Well, actually.
I know that they're more – I know that historically they've been more interested in a guy like Sanheim, but I can't see –
Yeah, they're not going to trade Sanheim.
I can't see Philadelphia trading him, and I can't see them trading a big guy like Philippe Myers who's cheap. So
no, they won't do that.
I don't think it's a fit. I still think Minnesota or other teams –
I could see Minnesota – again, look.
Yeah.
I understand the Nylander thing to the Flyers, but if all of a sudden Minnesota gives overtures that Dunba is not long for that team, I would think Fletcher would jump in because he moved heaven and earth to save Dunba in Minnesota. So I would think he'd be still interested in him.
You think Fletcher could jump in?
Yeah, I think Fletcher would jump in with that because he has assets he could deal too. One of them, What if after this season you say, hey, I'll give you Gostisbehere and Lawton for Dumba.
Yeah. Lawton's value is very high right now. It's the highest value.
Gostisbehere would clearly captain their power play, right? That's kind of what his specialty is and provides an element that they lack to a certain extent, though. I'm not sold on Lawton necessarily as a second piece.
I think a lot.
Having a great year.
Yeah.
He's definitely turning into like a really solid
third line player, right?
Center who can play second line minutes if someone's hurt. That's really what he's become. Yeah. And that's a valuable guy as a throw-in, Now it depends what you get here, and I think what we see out of Gostisbehere the rest of the playoffs will probably determine a lot of this. Like if we do see if Gostisbehere gets his act together and does turn it, because Gostisbehere is better defensively than Barrie. He's
better than Barrie defensively.
He's not.
You're not raising a high bar there, and Gostisbehere.
I know, I'm not.
Well, what I'm saying,
Barrie's a -1 defense in Stratomatic terms, Mike. Gostisbehere is a
1.
What I'm
saying is stylistically, he's in the same vein.
1-0 abs already.
There you go. Stylistically, he's in the same vein as Jake Gardiner and Tyson Barrie, and I think that there was a recognition from Dubas that doesn't work. They can have some defensemen like that, and they have plenty of them in their system, but they need guys who are physical, who can shut down other teams. That's why all these Gudas rumors are going.
Well, they're for real, and I think that I definitely have been talking about that for a while. I think they're definitely for real, and then it's possible that they don't move anybody. And I do agree with that. They bring in their young players and see what they can do. They have a couple young defensemen, like you've been talking about, Mike, for a while. Maybe these guys are readier than we realize. Yeah, that's the big question. We don't know. We don't know yet, and it's possible because the Toronto doesn't need a whole lot to become a whole lot better. Like if they just a couple things that are perfect for them, and they're a whole lot better. Like they're not just a little bit better; they're a whole lot better, and that's rare that a team is in that edge. Don't make any moves, and they're still not really nearly good enough. But they're close enough that they can make the right move here or there. I'm not going to say Gudas isn't that move, but Gudas gives you something.
He's a support player, but I think he's an effective support player. The ironic thing is the guy I've always compared Radko Gudas to, and he's a better defenseman, and because he's younger. But I've always compared him to Roman Polak. They're a very similar type of defenseman, and the funny thing is that Gudas's analytics numbers are great, and Polak's weren't. But the analytics community were up in arms when they brought Polak back, and all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh my, like having a parade if they bring Gudas in. And they're similar. They're very similar players.
Yeah, they are. I do agree with that.
I want to mention it's Matt Dumba, Henrik Lundqvist, PK Subban for the King Clancy. I think Dumba's going to win.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Lundqvist has a decent shot given the work that he's done outside and the amount of money. So
it's going to be tough this year. Dumba's really led in a way that Lundqvist had no chance to.
Yep.
I think the speech is going to win Dumba.
Yep. Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
That's going to help for sure. All right, that's all the time we have, guys. Enjoy the game. Here we are. We are games today. 5 games. One's already going. If you want to, I would bet the over on that one. I was looking at DraftKings yesterday, and they still haven't brought back. Like, the one thing I really liked about DraftKings more than anything else was like pick the players who were going to.
Oh yeah, you love that. Yeah,
I like that. That I don't see that anywhere now. They're just picking games and things like that right now.
The thing I don't like about DraftKings is it costs money to play.
No, it's kind of ridiculous to try to bet hockey, but it's fun trying to pick players who can score points. But betting on games in hockey is like
it's so hard.
It's insanity.
It's terrible, and it just does. I mean, unless you just have a really, even an upset, like I was looking at
most of these series
are going to beat Philly. Like I really thought Montreal would beat Philly today, so I was like, well, looking at what it would be. So if I bet like $5 in there,
series are 1-1. Like just think about it. You probably. That
I would think that would be like a good return. So I'm like $5 in there, I'd win $750 back. Just doesn't feel like
it's not worth it unless you're betting like
exactly. I know it's just not. I'm not betting 1,000. I'm betting $1 or $2.
Right.
Anyway, remember, folks, without the buzz is just hockey.